I'm gonna double check to make sure that the last I've actually recorded. So over the next however long, I'll be double checking the videos because they're playing musical mute the video. So I'm gonna see if that last video, if it recorded. If it didn't, if there's no sound, I will redo part two. Okay, if the sound is not on how we got here, part two, just know that I will redo it. I think I said I was going to pre-record it, and maybe I should. So with that being said, it just, with pre-recording, it sometimes it takes a long time to upload, and I think I get a little frustrated with that. I don't know if it depends on how fast your technology is going, but I'm like, man, just upload already. So I'm just gonna pick up where we left off. I called an old friend of the family that I grew up with that's between 5 to 7 years older than me. This individual I had attempted, he's one of the people that I had reached out to even prior to leaving Texas. This is somebody that was also involved with my other family members. When I spoke with him while I was in Texas, they said that I asked specifically, and the reason that I asked it is because I know what I've lived, what my son have lived, what we've gone through, and who's behind it. So I didn't care about their personal feelings about things. I wanted to know because I did not want to be dealing with somebody who was still dealing with my abusers, one of my abusers. Okay, I want nothing to do with it. I didn't have the time, space. My life was being fucked up, and it was about me and my son. I didn't care about people's fondness, about people's nothing. It's like I don't have time to catch people up with the reality. So I then, when I spoke with him while in Texas, I said, when was the last time you spoke with her? They lied to me. Her being my elder sibling that is in a cult. Period. Okay? Period. And not right. Not okay. And I don't care how fanciful they may or may not look today. But they harmed my son and me in Vegas. They've been participating in all of this stuff. So I didn't want nothing to do with them. They stolen from me and my son. They stopped people from giving to us. So I didn't want nothing to do with that. But let me stay on track, okay? I asked this extended friend of the family who I grew up with, that I had seen over the years and had spoken to here and there. Okay, yes, they're religious, but this is the same person that when we met up back in 2009 or 10, and we would chit chat and talk on the phone. This is the same person who would make statements like, "I can't stand church girls, church women, or something like that," and he would say, because he felt like they were hypocritical, they were acting like all super pure and blase, so he made concessions for how he felt like he interpreted the Bible himself. Okay, this is somebody that once upon a time, because I was on a traditional path, we would have discussions, and he was always opposing me. He was like, fornication was not originally in the Bible, and one thing and another. And I'm sharing this for context. Okay, the person, yes, was religious, but I did not think they had me per se, and I don't know why. I should have. I mean, I really should have known, but it's because they hid it. Okay, the times in which I would talk to them and reach out to them. They hid that. And so I'd asked, and I said, do you know what happened, blah, blah, blah. And so once I got his responses, I already put him in a check. I already put him in a box. I knew that the chances are he was talking to her. Chances are he had already been tainted by her. Chances, I already knew, because again, people feel they have tried to infantile me, thinking they have a right to govern my life. And when they see that I'm going on and getting happy outside of them and what they feel like is okay, then all of a sudden, these are the individuals who have something to say, as well as when I start talking about, the stuff people are doing to me and my son. Okay. So he told me, he was like, no, he lied. I knew he lied. I knew he lied based on how he said it. But I didn't want to believe that he was all the way corrupted. I didn't want to believe he was like, I knew he may have been a little judgy, but I didn't want to believe that he was fucked up. Okay? You know how you still be like, okay, it's because once upon a time we may have been judgy. So it's like, it comes with the religious package. That's that's religion 101. A little pretension, a little judginess, you have. And so it's like, I was okay with that, but I just didn't think, because listen, I've dealt with judgy people who still have a heart, in a sense, where they may be judging they don't like per se, right? But their humanity is like, she's still a person at the end of the day, and that's still her son, that's still a person. And what crap ass human would sit here and want, what I'm saying? What kind of crap ass human being operates like that and then say bless Jesus all day long? Okay. The hallelujah. And you're like, what kind of crap ass motherfucker, that's claiming to be of God, operate like some fucking modern day witch hunt, killing bitches and niggas and shit, as if this ain't 2026. Anyway, so I was trying to get his help several times before leaving. I was like, could we come and visit? Because he was traveling and stuff. I was like, could we come, chill at your spot while I work this out, while I find a connection, while I'm like, we're not safe. I was trying to talk to people before leaving Texas. This particular person too. They were the ones that were trying to gaslight me, making me, ignore it. They said something like, which was more clues. Well, all of that, if I'm sick, I'm just going to get myself well. I hadn't told him that I was sick. I hadn't said anything of the sort. So it's like, what are you being told? What do you know? And what are you involved in? And why are you trying to gaslight me into thinking that there's no foul play here? I told him I was being stalked. I told him I was being harassed. I told him what they were doing to my son's apartment. I told him about, the upstairs tenants being involved and what they were doing. I told him, like, we're not safe. I emphasized to even this person that me and my son was not safe. Our health and our well-being was at stake. Our mental, our emotional, and our physical. He tried to get into what have they done physically, and this is where I believe I was gathering information like, oh, okay, here's the gaslighting. This is also where they're trying to see how much do I know about what they've done. I am aware that they've been poisoning me and my son. So I told him, I was like, bus ticket, like something, because again, I was still under the illusion that they were not, they could have their view, but they weren't fucked up. That they wasn't, they ain't trying to like make a bitch and her kids some kind of suffrage to prove some kind of religious point. Because that's what some of these motherfuckers is on. In some cases, money, and then to try to prove some kind of religious point. And then as to scare people from leaving religion, they're trying to use me as an example of. So he did nothing. I asked him if, he asked me to send him the link to my GoFundMe page and all that. I did all that. He contributed nothing, which all these are red flags. Because everybody got $20 unless you're in the same situation my son and I are in. Hell, you go to Starbucks. If you go to Starbucks for 2 days in a row, you spend $20, bitch. Your ass will spend $20. You in Starbucks. This is motherfucker that's got a 501c. Okay. I gotta get a context now. I gotta get a context. Okay. They have a 501c. They do. Listen to me. I'm only sharing this because this helps to paint the picture of how I got here. There's a story behind it, and that includes all of this. We can't, people get all weirded out. It's like, no, but these were major roles. I didn't want to believe that somebody that is philanthropic, somebody that is helping the youth, I didn't want to believe that they would be fucked up. Even though they were religious. I knew that. But I didn't want to believe that. I wanted to believe that there was a cap off. Like, okay, yeah, I don't like that. I don't agree. But I'm not a monster. I'm not a monster, though. Gee whiz. Just because I ain't vibing with somebody, I'm not a fucking monster. I'm not a sadist while preaching the gospel. Anyway, obviously I'm not going to make my goal here. I had a goal with this video. Let me stay focused. He didn't do any of that. He didn't support. When we talked initially, he would say, put me on hold for a while. I believe that there was something going on with that. Mm-hmm. And he ended up doing nothing. And this was around the holidays. I was like, anything, we were struggling financially. We were in between. I was trying to get us ready and prepared to do what we were going to do. And I was like, blah, blah, blah. Anything could help, support, blah, blah, blah. Nothing. He went on a trip, said that he had to take care of his kids. He doesn't have any kids. His kids are, the business that he has for the youth. Okay. And I had to, here's more red flags. I had to continue to reach out. What I found out about people who you're a hater and they're secretly enjoying your suffrage or your struggle or whatever, like they want you in this kind of a desperation beggared energy. They really could care less about your health and your well-being. When people care about your health and your well-being, you're not going to have to call them 4 times to double check to see if they got the last, you're not going to have to do any of that. Not people that actually know you. And we're not talking about business here. We're talking about people that know you. I understand business got 10 clients and it's first, they trying to get to everybody, blah, blah, blah. We're talking now about people who know you. These are all red flags. I still didn't want to believe, though, at the end of the day, leading up to the future here, to the present day. So he didn't do anything. Just like the CIA ex-boyfriend didn't do anything. Okay, because all simultaneously at the same time I was reaching out. So I reached out to the person who gave me the information, who recommended and encouraged me to come here. I also reached out around that same time, originally in Texas, to this ex-boyfriend of mine that's an actual CIA agent that was at the time of our dating. He was in San Diego. Okay, then he ends up relocating to Hawaii. He didn't do anything either. Once again, these are people who were in position and did nothing. What does that tell you? Okay, it tells you a few things. Either they're narcissistic, they had secret hatred, insensitive, uncaring, or they were in on the stuff to begin with. Okay, because these people could have been, you mean to tell me the nigga that I dated didn't have $20 to put into my account? That's his lunch. That's one lunch, $20. If it's that cheap. These are people who possibly had jealousy towards me, and I just didn't, I was too busy surviving. I was too busy dealing with one of the main jealous characters that was, and I'm talking spiritual jealousy, gifts, other things. It's not always, some of these people be having shit, so it's not always about being jealous of people having shit or looking a certain way. Time went on. I continued. This is in Texas. And so then I reached out to him, the friend of the family, and while I was in Fontana, to meet me here. I called him one evening, given him, I said, I don't know if you know or have been tracking what's been going on with me through social media. I said, but I made my way to California. This is what we're dealing with. I have been trying to utilize these resources, and we're going from pillar to post, and nothing is panning through. Anything that you can do. Anything that you can do. Because remember, I was still banking on the basic humanity of him, and banking on, again, this is, he's got resources and connects, and this is a more benevolent attempt. Like, okay, he may not like my life decisions to pursue the things that I've pursued, but maybe his humanity is still on. So I'm going to see, if, he has a 501c, he deals with famous people, he travels, he does all these things. maybe, now that I'm in California, you know, so I'm closer to home. So maybe now there's something that they'd be willing to do or could do to assist with me being here, whether that's transporting me somewhere or whatever, now that I'm in California. So he was the one to tell me, to instruct me to connect with this, one of the access centers in this location. Okay, he said that he was going to reach out to the mayor. So right there off the bat, that was letting me know, okay, because what regular person typically is talking about they're going to call the mayor, like, personally? I mean, I guess you could. I guess, the public can. But typically, folks ain't really doing that. So he mentioned, he gave me the name, and then he said he was going to reach out to the mayor to find out the information to give to me. He was going to call them to give to me to look into that could provide help and assistance in that way. So of course I was like, oh, okay. I mean, it sounded okay. Now, from there, I was given that information, and then I was instructed to contact a particular person, okay, at one of the access centers locations, one of their people, a specific person. That's the instruction I was given, and I followed it, and I gave that person some basic information about me and my son, our income, our situation. And from there, I was told that he was going to contact his team and that they would be reaching out to me. And this was supposed to be, at least I thought, now that's my bad, an attempt to get ahead of things, because typically in access centers, they're usually walk-ins. You just have to show up and go through the process, and if there's a space, and in my case, I didn't have transportation. I was coming way from a whole nother county. So I thought this was an attempt to make the transition a lot smoother for me, considering the circumstances, getting ahead of it, having these people basically call me and talk to me and do all of this stuff over the phone, so that whatever needed to be determined was determined, and so that I could, once we arrived, it wouldn't be this hustle, this drama-filled, unnecessary drama-filled show. But it was anything but that. Okay. Once the initial person that I spoke to then assigned the person to talk to me, they called and asked me like 20 questions. I think the whole process like 5-6 times. Basically, after I had given all the information from the jump. And this was all on the day that I had to leave. Where I was at. Then to say they didn't have a bed available because I had found a ride that could take me, which is the lady that I mentioned on the other video, the church lady. They didn't have a room available, but they would have one the next day. Remember, we talked about intentional delays, so that the stuff that looks like a process and its plausibility, what they say, plausible deniability spell. Because it is plausible that they didn't, but is it true that they didn't is another animal. when the goal is to constantly create tension, stress, to constantly create more strain, delays unnecessarily. And that's what happened. So the lady that made herself available to pick us up and bring us, it was a whole fiasco, the whole process. Like this, they feed off of drama and chaos. They follow the whole shit. Once again, to put unjust, undue strain on an already strenuous situation. Then, once I told, now let's go back before I left, and then they were like, they're going to have a room, blah, blah, blah. And I communicated with the person that I grew up with 5 to 7 years ahead of me. I was like, okay, this is before I knew that the lady who brought me, because just to be in respect and fair, I had not told her. Okay, I still am mindful of people. I don't care how different we are. I'm still mindful. That is not what I communicated. And I don't know her life. How do I know this person's got time to be going way over here when I originally said, okay? So I'm still respectful of people, especially when they're helping me out. So I didn't know for sure, okay? And because I had to get with her, or I had let her know and was waiting. So in the interim, I had reached out back to the guy I grew up with that recommended. I was like, okay, this is what looks like is happening. They're saying they will have a space. Could you assist with transport? Because I mean, I already told them the story. I already knew I didn't have anything, so that wasn't a shock. And his response was there was red flags along the way. But again, you're caught up in all of that. You're in survival, and you're really just trying to focus on getting the goal. And it's like at the end of the day, no matter how crazy acting people are and trippy and weird and strange, you're just trying to, you have a goal. It's like you and your kid. That's your goal. But these are red flags. He was like, again, this is somebody that should have $20. And if you're a 501c, you get money from the government anyway. I'm not going to get too deep into that, but that is what it is. Okay? That's because that's your job. That's your income. At least the bulk of it. 501c's, I am aware they're designed to build these companies and I get that. That's what the funding is for, but we're not going to really talk about all of that right now. Okay? Neither here nor there. That's really not the real issue. The real issue is it's someone I grew up with. We're not talking about a stranger. Okay? And I am giving them privy to what's going on with me and my adult disabled son. Liking or not liking my life choices, I don't like theirs. And the family member in which they're in cahoots with. But that was never my business. I am intelligent and mature enough to know that. I still never once intervened or wished harm on these people due to their various varied life paths. Now, that was he wanted to pass the buck. Okay. The lady in which the house I was staying had already did her part by allowing me and my son to stay there for the time frame in which technically she kind of wasn't supposed to, because that's not her program. That is not what her 501c is. Okay, that's not what they gave her approval for. So technically, we shouldn't have been there all together. But, whatever their involvement could have been in, which could be a part of, talking with Emma, Redlands, those people or whatever their involvement in this shenanigans was, okay? The point I'm making here is the guy, the friend of the family, when I, I followed his instruction of what he recommended, which is where I am, how I got here. He wanted to pass the buck. He wanted to see if the company, the access center that's here, if they would be willing to Uber, or, Uber, Lyft, bus ticket, whatever, or if he wanted me to ask the lady. You see that? That should have been a clue. Like, nigga. That's gonna hurt you. You're gonna spend that tomorrow. You finna spend that. You finna spend that when you go to Starbucks. That should have been a clue that something was off. Remember, this suffrage, this torture, this need to have me and my son go through unnecessary problems is what everybody's paid for. No matter how small and big, every annoyance, maybe get extra $5. You know what I'm saying? Maybe you get shit. Maybe get a little bit, 2 Walmart gift cards versus 1. Maybe get a promotion. Who knows? But this, and the whole thing is to frustrate, irritate, to keep our energy discombobulated and upset and uproar, and people really sleeping good at night as if they're not really doing something sicko. Fascinating. Like hee-heeing and ha-haing. It lets you know how demonic in the mind and parasitic. If you don't like the idea of like thinking about spirits and stuff, you could say parasitic. Okay, you can say, the fear nature versus the trust nature, because that's that parasitic primitive behavior. Because if you're hackling like one of these gremlins and hyenas, you know what I'm saying? Even when they Bible that they love to put on public display tells them that love does not delight. Yes, I know the word, huh? Yeah, I also know what they're not living. Because just because somebody can make that statement don't mean that it's something applied. Just because I can say it don't mean I can be it. I can say, the word of the Lord says, I can say this. Love does not delight it with evil. And then if somebody were to ask, okay, could you apply that? What do you mean by that? Yeah. What does that mean? Does you saying it? That's nice. I'm glad you know how to say it. Okay, what does it mean? How does it apply? Love doesn't delight. What about the scripture? Thinketh of such things, all things that are of good report, praiseworthy, honorable. Oh no! I'm not mocking. I'm not. That's their department. I'm not mocking. I'm just calling it out. I'm calling out how they don't live it. Because you have to be a self-aware person to even be able to properly evaluate yourself. People who love and care for you want things to be comfortable, simple for you. People who love and care for you and have respect for you and your children are wanting, wishing, and if they have any power over it or any means to support, are seeking that with you and for you. They're not your hidden enemy. They're not people who want to further complicate already complicated situations. They're not people who want to further pile onto an already tumultuous, burdensome situation. There are people who are wanting to find ways to make things easy. But this should have been the red flag that this was a religious agenda, political agenda involved. Humiliation rituals, all those things. The whole process was tumultuous. The lady that, brought us, that drove us, I already I knew, okay? It's like, okay, Warfare, it's like, and this is a bunch of niggas and bitches up to bullshit. I'm just gonna go ahead and simplify it because it is what it is. We can play spiritual and all that. By the end of the day, it's people with fucking agendas playing fucking games. Period. But this need to, people need to be able to show up as hero. I'm finding it fascinating, all these characters that needs to happen at the expense of me and my son. It was tumultuous. It was confusion and tumultuous. And even in their book, it says confusion is of the devil. So who? Well, because I wasn't the one confused. I wasn't the one creating it either. So who's of the devil then, based on their reference? Because I was communicative. I was communicating clearly, and yet they needed to call me. They, being the people they referred me to, need to call me 5 times to ask the questions in which I had answered. And then on the day of, because I was getting a ride, I tried to call them early in the morning to get confirmation on everything, and nobody answered. They decided to call me once we were heading that way, in the afternoon, once I was able to get the ride. But I had done my due diligence. Like I said, I'm communicative. And they were talky a whole lot the day before. All of a sudden, I also wasn't told, these are things you just, you run into when you're there, but that's a part of the entrapment, because it's like, well, then what are you going to do? I wasn't told in advance that I wouldn't be able to leave the property without my son. I wasn't, maybe these are things I should have asked. I'm taking note, I'm learning along the way. Because maybe that's something that's for all shelter programs or something, unbeknownst to me. I'm just simply saying I wasn't told this from the gate. So let's say I was required to, I wouldn't be able to do it. When you are a victim of what we're a victim of, and this shit is still happening, yet any parent that's worth their salt wouldn't be interested in their already assaulted adult disabled person being dropped out of some crazy ass adult daycare with some lunatic so that they can manufacture some fake ass misfortune that they would. They ain't seen nothing yet. They ain't seen nothing yet. Let them laugh, ha ha, for now. Laugh now, cry later. Now, so he didn't want to give me a ride. He didn't he didn't want to bring himself or order. Okay, because there's always ways they could either brought their own self or fucking order. Hell, I have haters that order me a fucking Uber. They didn't want to do that. The person I grew up with that's a philanthropist and that's helping all of this wonderful stuff. They didn't want to help the bitch they fucking grew up with and they disabled kid. Because they ain't cahoots with the loony bin's energy in their family. And yeah. It's in the pudding. My grandmother would have said that. Truth, the proof is in the pudding. It's in the pudding. The pudding, and her, they used to call her pudding. But the pudding, the pudding is in these actions, these subtle actions that were red flags. Because people who love you and care for you, if they're in a position. We're not talking about enabling an addict. Listen, I'm someone who grew up around addicts. I grew up around these, alcohol, drug and alcohol and people, and I've dealt with that. I know about that. So, but I am not that. Ironically enough. And whatever his experience has been with his family is neither here nor there either, or anybody else for that matter. It's, you deal with people based on you dealing with them individually. Not your cousin always got their hand out and you always, bailing them out and always, okay, that's your cousin, nigga. But I ain't always in your pocket because you ain't did a damn thing for me. Or my son. Not that people have to. The point that I'm making, you all, is I'm giving you all context, and when people claim to care for you, because that is what this whole thing is. A lot of people going around acting like they care and concern. So this is why I am giving the story in context of how this happened and what is still happening as me and my son are here. Yes, this is something that will be taken outside. This will be, I am doing that. I'm not going to bank on any of the resources that I have to use here to do it. There's something I'm going to have to do external to that. Ensure no foul play. I was out, listen, while I did the second video there before I did this one, 3 sheriffs, this is supposed to intimidate me. Because they sure ain't getting these criminals. They not getting these people that's harassing and stalking me. Because some of them is on that MKO, MKO. They own that corruption. I didn't say all, I said some. Some of them on that religious agenda, that Masonic agenda. These people just don't reside in their lodges. They have regular jobs in the community, government, blah, 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 blah. Hello. This is a beat down area, but you see all these fancy schmancy cars circling around this motherfucker like this Crenshaw Friday night trying to show out. Casting spells and shit, being weird. Frequency weaponry. Fuck. We get here and it was a shit show. We did all of this preparation to get here in advance, talking to these people, giving them all this information, doing all of this stuff over the phone several times over. Only to arrive and there's still 1,000 more shit that took hours to resolve while we sit in vehicle and in lobby. That was for the street theater. That was intentional to cause what? More uncomfortability. My son is sensitive. He's traumatized. He's got phobias on top of what he already had due to all this shit. 0% sensitivity to it. In fact, provoked intentionally. I'm not saying that every person that was involved knew full well. I'm simply saying the grander thing was intentional. Cause delays, trigger the disabled one, which is going to then trigger, it's going to be a trickling effect. It's going to trigger security. It's going to trigger all these, because he's a man. And you know what I'm saying? All of these things to traumatize my son even further. He's been through hell, and these people did not display any fucking compassion. That's what they all getting paid for. In fact, they may even got a boost. That's why they're able to go shopping and maybe get their car fixed. When I'm thinking that the reason why we're doing all of this in advance was connected, I'm still thinking that that's what the favor is. That's kind of where the friendship in a high vibrational service, like, okay, we're getting ahead of it. Normally, we don't do all of this. Normally, for the rest of the public, we don't do all of this way. You walk in standard and, you go through the standard. So I'm thinking that all of this talking all of this sharing my information over the phone, all of this doing all of that was so that this terrible situation could be a little less terrible. So that when we arrive, we can be treated with some fucking dignity and have it already, because we went ahead of it. We did the things ahead of it to where we can get our shit out the car, sit it down, and then talk to the people, because they ran all of the things that they needed to run to make sure we ain't no fucking pervs, the stuff you have to do before you let somebody in your program. That was the point of doing everything in advance. Run the social. run the information, so that way they get here, we can have it already ready for them, the room ready, put their stuff away, and they can breathe, and they can, slowly, comfortably, the child could sit in the room and get some breath, and drink and relax, and not feel overburdened by noise and crowds like autistics are. 0%. And yes, everybody was told from the gate his condition. So he's got, phobias now, do crying babies, and, he's sensitive because it's something about abuse. So, crying babies, loud noises, flies, and they are making sure to keep trying to keep that around him as well. Yes, the sycophants that's involved in this shit. And these people walk around smirking. Yes, these are people who can squeeze babies out their loins or their penises, and they still have the audacity. They don't know that their little somebody may grow up to be a little special one, and they gonna hate life. They gonna hate life. People don't think like that no more, though. People do not think like that no more. So the whole little thing was tumultuous. Then we get into the location after the Circus Street Theater show was conducted. So for 4 hours, the lady that brought us was sitting in the car while they was terrorized. My son was traumatized. I walked around and I saw that. I'm like, really? I had to step in to calm and neutralize the situation. Yeah. People can't discern that there's something, I'm like, you shouldn't have to be the sharpest pencil in the pencil box, in my opinion, bitch. I'm just going to say it. You shouldn't have to even have had too much experience with the population to be able to get in the presence of someone like him and pick up that there's something. If you do, you shouldn't even have the fucking job you have, nigga. Because at some point, in the exchange of communication, there should be a pickup. But is this an idiot drunk that's acting a fool, or is this somebody that's kind of not okay in the mind? Like, because we lying if we sit here acting like we were scared. So I was actually gonna leave because I was like, I'm already feeling some kind of way. It's a shit, it's not, I thought getting ahead of it was supposed to make things more organized and more smooth. I get a worker, and they start out, which should have been another issue. In these situations, why are you telling the client about your sickness and issue with your children? Somebody that's homeless and trying to remedy their life. Was that what you were told to do? Because see, typically in these things, what's been happening is, to try to create some kind of a bond or trust with me. Like they really want to support and help, and, realness and relatability, and, all that vibe. And then they switch it up on you real quick. But the thing is, why? Because if none of these people are watching me on social media, Then why? Same thing, different state. So then they become, when I got here, there was no dresser. I was told they're going to be ordering that. They didn't. It took, it was a month, and it only happened because I ran into the person that I guess does that, and I said something. I reported this to everybody. So how many times was I supposed to do that? Why am I sharing this? Am I snitching? Yes and no, because that's not really my heart and intention. I'm giving context of the events that have been taking place, which showing the pattern of this plausible deniability stuff, but it's showing some suspicious patterns. Because then I look like the bitch. I look like the bitcher, the bitch and moaner, complainer when I'm going around to all these people. But if shit ain't getting done, nigga. If you are communicating, there was confusion in who you go to for things. I mean, I wasn't given all that. Who what? You're just trying to get the things that you need to get, that you're told that would be supplied. It's not about trying to overstep somebody's authority. I'm trying to get things done and they ain't getting done. So who am I supposed to talk to? Because shouldn't all the powers that be want this to be as smooth, comfortable, and dignified as possible for their population, ideally? So I said, okay. But guess what? I didn't bitch and moan about it. I let it slide. Like I said, it was up to 3 weeks. I called, I mentioned things, and then I was like, okay. I made it do what it do. I couldn't get the remote to work from the gate. They had 2-3 people coming here and nobody could fix. Nobody. I'm tech savvy. So I already knew it's like, okay, it's not, for whatever reason, it's not allowing this remote from the TV. You may have to set it up initially with a remote first because it's not letting you select it. I don't know why it's not letting, because again, I'm pretty tech savvy. When people don't know I used to work for Apple. Duh, hello. That's people don't know a whole lot about my life prior to this situation that me and my son are in. If they investigate that, they can find that out. It was through a third-party company. Once again, I'm giving context so you all can see the small. Because listen, it's not always the big pow bang boom. It's the consistent small annoyances and delays. Plausible deniability. And ways to force energetic exchange with me. Proximity and energetic exchange. Create enough problems, enough delays, enough misunderstandings, air quote, while running confusion spells actually on them so that they can look like they're confused. So for weeks, I reported it to all the people. I mean, at least that I was being directed, because how am I supposed to know? How am I supposed to just know? Because it's, again, that's how we got here. So even that there was no ability to watch TV for the first two weeks. Because we couldn't get it troubleshooted. Nobody seemed to be able to find somebody who could. And, you know, until eventually I spoke with the case manager again, and then they were just like, okay, just here and just give it blah, 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 blah. Then they ended up giving broke one, or one that didn't have something like that, and I put the batteries in it. You couldn't do it. I laughed because I said, I'm like, really? It didn't have a back, and even if you were to put batteries in it, it still didn't work. I laughed and said, I was just going to purchase my own remote, because if it's that big of a deal, it's okay. It's okay. I mean, I could have just checked the remote in and out like we do everything else, but it's okay. Again, anything to be an inconvenience and an annoyance unnecessarily. Okay, security yelled at my son, put him out. That's why he was standing out, triggered when we first got here. I didn't get to see the whole thing. I just saw him upset, and the lady sitting in the car. I'm like, why aren't you out trying to help him? Why did I have to come and get my son? People gave him, I saw that. Christian. Then I get him in the car, and then as I go in and continue, she's talking to him and telling him like to brush stuff off and stuff like that. I'm like, man, no. People need to be accountable. People need to be made educated. I wonder how many more of his population is enduring all kinds of stuff because of the laziness of this world in these programs. They'd be crying like a bitch if they had some special needs somebody in their life and end up finding out, the ones who still have a conscience anyway. I have reported the incidences to the case manager about my connection with the friend of the family who recommended here the breach that I felt like had happened, as to why we have still been being stalked, and I'm still getting data collecting on people harassing and stalking and following me and my son around still. I let them know. I asked for transfer. I asked, if there could be a transfer to a different location within I've done all these things. Okay. They had an event, I want to say the second day after we were here, the second or the third day when we first arrived. And it was a mandatory meeting, and these companies came out, like healthcare and management, things like that, and just to take blood, because you have to be tested, which makes sense if you're going to be in these places. And so I was like, okay, and so I signed up, it's like, hey, it's easy peasy. It's what you have to do. They have to make sure that you don't have, TB and all of that. So, okay, very well. And then they started moving funny and strange, the two workers, once it was my turn. Right after they finished with the clients before me, I picked up on all those vibes. And I said, okay. I was like, you know what? Once again, unnecessary waiting, stalling, and delaying. This is what this whole thing is. So I was like, well, I'll reschedule. You know what I'm saying? We're not going to do that. I saw people go in and out. People that were not related sitting in there with each other. I watched the whole thing prior to my own turn. So I'll go, okay. So I left. I said, let me reschedule so that, for me and my son, so we can maybe get it done together. And we did reschedule it, and they came to our room to take both my son and I's blood. And they did. And then I get a call, something about, false negative for my son due to insurance. So wanting a redo. I was like, okay. They said that they, could connect to resources, and they found resources for him, but they didn't find any for me. They found a bunch of shoes and clothing and blase, but they didn't find anything for women. Okay, which is not standard. Typically, you're going to find more things for women than you do men. You can, even if you were to just go online and look for yourself, you find more things. So it's like, okay, I got caught what that is. And then every time my son and I get in a lift that's been ordered by this company, not the company where we're staying, but every time there's weird behavior, weird things happen. My son starts to act like he's suddenly super, super tired, even if he wasn't acting tired before getting in the Uber or Lyft. My son peed on himself 4 or 5 times, jerking in his sleep, weird things happening, like he's got spasms or stuff like that. We both got sick. Weird shit got on my skin within days. Every time we get a lift, every occurrence, all of a sudden he's yawning and tired. Every time we go to a doctor's appointment or a medical facility, government medical facility, and he's sitting in there and we're there too long, all of a sudden he starts to feel drained and tired. Every time we leave the premises, before long, there's people pulling up, showing up, surrounding us, hurling negative energy, yelling things out their cars, throwing things out their cars. Every time I use a resource, suddenly something is starting to happen with these resources. The so-called laundry facilities, it's helping me to learn the questions to ask. Ain't nobody finna be washing those 10 pieces. And ain't nobody doing that. At least, let me rephrase that. I'm not. We've been violated and intruded upon enough as it is. I just saw 111. This was supposed to be 20 minutes. I may have to do another one, condensed version, so that people can track and follow. So I attempt to connect with resources that could provide clothing, stuff, you know, just coincidentally just wasn't there. But I have to I'm informing these people that schedule the transportation for us. And so that's where the leak is. It's there or it's on the tap, one of the two of the device. Because just so happened, once again, all to have access to our energy, to waste time, and to create this whole miracle around. And it's a small town, and a lot of stuff is religious based. Even though religious based is not supposed to mean they're enacting discriminatory, prejudiced behavior, but they are. Because I guarantee if it's a 501c, it's supposed to be somewhere in them contracts. I think in some of them that I've seen, it states certain stuff. It's like, no, it's everybody, baby. But the corruption is offering these people stuff too, possibly. Hey, we'll offer you blah, 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 blah. Okay. That's unnatural to have this many things continue to happen, and that's why I'm talking about it. What is my son supposed to do? So we're getting out of here, yes. But in the interim, my goal has been to try to, because I'm a mother and I'm a decent person and I'm doing what anybody that still have their scruples intact would do. Attempt to make it as dignified and comfortable as you can. Currently, there's no table and chair. If you're sitting on the bed or the floor. What is he supposed to do, people that came to care so much about the autistics? Then, so they can look sideways at me. All of this is to fashion their narratives. They want to force conformity and stuff that he's not comfortable with, neither nor I am. The ignorance is sealing their fate. He's traumatized and is still being violated. He ain't going to no damn adult daycare, bitch. So that somebody else, every time I turn my back, something stupid is happening. I'm sure not finna turn my back in some strange location. I can't turn my back for more than an hour without some weird bitch or some weird dude coming around him doing some weird shit. They've been trying to manufacture disaster for years. They've been manufacturing disaster. In a healthy, what kind of environment is conducive to somebody reforming and becoming healthy and thriving? This ain't it. This is not it. We were barely able, I mean, we went to the park, aside, I threw a curveball. We were at the park for the longest period of time since a very long time. And you would have thought it was the end time apocalypse. It was having a shit attack. I can only imagine. Oh God, oh my God. Where's she at? She's sitting on the ground. Helicopter, bitch. Cue the walker, cue. There's a person right here, V2K, dog walker. Are they in the bathroom? Where are they at? Inside the gymnasium. Huh. It's too much aloneness. We're gonna need to start doing some spells. Attack her crown. Attack. Make them attack. Make them feel attacked and tired. Where are our practitioners? Where are our hired whores? You ain't chatting hard enough, bitch. Do it harder. Did you do the signal right? You didn't do the hand gesture right. You're supposed to do it like this 2 times and then turn around and say the hokey pokey. That was the most solace or serenity, tranquility at a park that we were able to take yesterday. Without too many people, every smoker, walker, zombie manifesting from the skies, bitch, I don't know, you know. Where I was able to enjoy it, and my son was, to a degree. I had to put on some frequencies, and that helped with some of what was going on there. But this is what we're dealing with. This is what's happening since we have arrived. I was banking on humanity left. I was banking on the people that I once knew having a sense of that left about them. I was sorely wrong. And all of this is leading, so Compton gets the honor. Where I was born, they get the honor of getting the first charge. They're going to be honored with that. Because they shouldn't have did this shit. Simple as that.